I was 20 when I believed love could save me. I was 21 when I realized it could also destroy me. Silas Reed had always been the kind of boy people noticed. Not because he tried to be, but because everything about him seemed to hold a quiet kind of light, like the world bent slightly toward him. When I first saw him across the campus courtyard, he was laughing with a group of film students, his camera hanging from his neck, sunlight slicing across his face. He didn't notice me then, but I noticed him. And from that day on, I couldn't look away. Back then, I was Julian Cross, the boy who always did what was expected. Straight A's, debate team, part-time barista at a campus cafe, son of a pastor. My life was neatly packaged, predictable and suffocating. I didn't know what freedom was until Silas smiled at me one afternoon and said, "You ever think about doing something crazy, Julian?" Crazy. That word stuck to me like honey and poison. I didn't know it yet, but Silas Reed was about to turn my life upside down, with his camera, his reckless dreams, and his dangerous faith in people, especially me. Silas had this way of making the world look cinematic. He could point his lens at a broken streetlight or a cracked coffee mug and somehow turn it into art. He said stories lived in everything, you just had to look close enough to see them. "You have something in you," he told me once, late at night in his cluttered dorm room, the glow of his computer screen painting shadows across his cheekbones. "You just don't trust it yet." And for the first time in my life, someone believed in me. That belief was intoxicating. It made me reckless. It made me brave. It made me stupid. By the time winter came, I had dropped out of college. I told my parents I wanted to take time off, to figure out my path. The truth? I just wanted to follow him. Silas said we'd build something together, a channel, a brand, a story that mattered. He said the world didn't need another degree. It needed truth. Needed us. We rented a small apartment downtown, half studio, half bedroom, with white walls covered in post-it notes, quotes, and sketches. We filmed everything. Our coffee mornings, our rooftop sunsets, our fights, our laughter. The world started watching. At first, it felt like magic. We grew fast online. Silas's short films, intimate, raw, unapologetically queer, caught fire. The comments flooded in. "You guys are real. This is love. You make me believe again." And for a while, it was real. Until it wasn't. Because the same internet that builds you up has a way of tearing you down, especially when it smells weakness or truth. Started small. A thread on Reddit. A blurry photo. A rumor. Someone said I wasn't really into him, that I was just riding his fame, that I was using him, that our love was a marketing stunt. Silas laughed it off at first. "They don't know us," he said, brushing it aside as he edited our next video. "Let them talk." But words have a way of sticking. They crawl under the skin, fester in silence, and rot everything they touch. Soon, every post we made was dissected, mocked, analyzed. People took screenshots of our smiles and turned them into memes. They called me manipulative, a fraud, a coward. Then came the post. It wasn't even from a stranger. It was from someone who used to be our friend, someone from Silas's film class. A single screenshot captioned, "Funny how Julian said he didn't even like guys before meeting Silas. Guess love really changes people, or maybe it's just for views." The comments exploded. "Wait, what? So it was fake? Silas deserves better. Julian's lying to everyone." By morning, I'd lost everything. My inbox was full of hate. My parents saw the post and called me, not to ask if I was okay, but to ask if it was true. And Silas, he didn't say anything. He just looked at me, really looked, and I saw something break in his eyes. "Is it true?" he asked softly. My throat tightened. "What do you mean? Did you ever mean it?" Me. I wanted to scream that of course I did. That every touch, every laugh, every whispered, "I love you," under cheap fairy lights had been real. but the words wouldn't come. Because when you're drowning in lies other people tell about you, sometimes you start to question your own truth. He turned away. I thought you believed in us. And just like that, the light went out. Weeks passed. Our channel tanked. The brand deals vanished. The silence between us grew heavier than the noise outside. Silas stopped filming. I stopped sleeping. One night, I found him on the roof, cigarette in hand, eyes hollow. The boy who once believed in everything was disappearing before my eyes. I wanted to make something beautiful, he said quietly. But maybe beauty just breaks people. Silas. He looked at me then, and there was no anger, just sadness. You dropped out of college for me, Julian, and now look at you. You've lost everything. I didn't lose you, I said, voice trembling. But even as I said it, I knew I already had. When he left, he didn't say goodbye. He just packed his camera, his clothes, and the parts of my heart I would never get back. I stayed, because where else could I go? The internet had made me a villain in a story I didn't write. My name was trending not for what I'd done, but for what people wanted to believe. I deleted our channel, deleted every post, every memory. But the internet doesn't forget. It never does. Some nights I'd still watch his old videos, the ones where he'd pan the camera toward me, laughing, his voice soft as he'd say, "Look at him. Isn't he beautiful?" And I'd wonder, who was he talking about? The boy I was? Or the boy he thought I could be? Months later I got an email. No words, just a link. It was a new short film by Silas Reed. It opened with two hands almost touching, but never meeting. Then his voice, quiet, raw. Love isn't something you capture. It's something you lose, piece by piece, until all that's left is the memory of the light. He'd used clips of us, our laughter, our tears, our story reimagined as art. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I just smiled, because maybe in some way that was his goodbye. His way of saying it mattered, that we mattered. Even if the world thought otherwise. It's been a year now. I've gone back to school quietly under a new name. I don't film. I don't post. But sometimes, when I pass by the film lab, I still hear his voice in my head, saying, "You just don't trust it yet." And maybe he was right. Because someday, I think I'll make something beautiful again. Not for fame. Not for him, but for the boy who dropped out for love and learned how to believe in himself again. Spring crept in quietly that year, almost apologetically, as if the world itself knew it had been too harsh. The cherry trees on campus were blooming again, and the air smelled like beginnings, soft, hesitant, but alive. I thought I'd forgotten how to start over. Turns out you never really forget. You just forget that you're allowed to. My days became a blur of lectures, black coffee, and notebooks filled with scribbled thoughts I couldn't say out loud. I wasn't Julian Cross anymore, at least not the version the internet knew. I went by Jules Carter now, a name that didn't come with expectations or headlines. Just a boy in a hoodie sitting in the back of a creative writing class, trying to remember how to breathe. I'd stopped checking social media months ago. But sometimes, when the classroom fell silent and the hum of computers filled the air, I'd still feel the phantom vibration of my phone, like a ghost reminding me that somewhere out there, my name was still floating through comment sections, forever misunderstood. But I didn't hate Silas anymore. Hate requires too much energy, the kind of energy I'd already spent surviving. What I felt was something quieter, something closer to gratitude, even if it came with a dull ache. Because loving him had destroyed me, yes, but it had also cracked me open in ways I didn't know I needed. It taught me that belief in someone, in something, was both the purest and most dangerous thing you could give away. It was late one evening when I saw him again. I'd been walking home from the library, rain starting to fall, when a small film poster caught my eye. The Light Between Us, a short film by Silas Reed. My breath hitched. I stood there for a long time, staring at it under the flickering streetlight. His name printed in white letters against a dark blue sky. Two silhouettes on a bridge, almost touching. He was here, in the same city, showing the film at an independent theater downtown. I don't know what made me go. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was something deeper, a need to see if the boy who once made me believe still existed somewhere behind the lens. The theater was small and intimate, with red velvet seats and a faint smell of popcorn. The kind of place that still believed in stories. I sat in the last row, hood up, heart pounding like it remembered something my mind had tried to forget. When the lights dimmed and the first frame appeared, I felt my chest tighten. It was us, again. But different this time. The film didn't show our faces directly, just fragments, a shadowed hand brushing against sunlight, the corner of a smile, a blurred reflection in a puddle. The voiceover was his, soft and contemplative. We always film what we're afraid to say out loud. Maybe that's why I kept the camera on so long, so I wouldn't have to admit what I'd done wrong. The audience was silent. You could almost hear the collective breath being held. Then the scene shifted. Two figures standing apart on a rooftop at dusk. One of them turns to the other and says, "Do you still believe in us?" And the voice, my voice, replies, "I believe in what we tried to be." I don't remember ever saying that, but it sounded like something I would have. The film ended with a quote on the screen. Even when we lose the person, the love stays. In the quiet corners, in the things they taught us, in the way we keep trying. The lights came back on. People clapped softly, some even wiping tears. And then I saw him. Silas stood at the front of the room, nervous smile, same messy hair, wearing that old brown jacket he'd always said made him feel like a director. He looked older, not by much, maybe just by the kind of pain that doesn't show on the outside but lives in the eyes. He was answering questions when I finally found the courage to move. I walked down the aisle slowly, almost trembling, until his eyes lifted, scanning the crowd, and landed on me. Felt like the air stopped moving. For a second, he didn't react. Then his expression changed. A flicker of disbelief, then recognition, then something that might have been relief. "Julian?" he breathed, barely audible. I swallowed hard. "Hey, Silas." The audience turned to look, murmurs rising, but I didn't care. For the first time in a long time, the noise didn't matter. He stepped down from the stage, hesitant, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to come closer. Then he did. "You came," he said softly. "I didn't plan to." He gave a small, almost sad smile. "You never did." That made me laugh, just a little, because it was true. He'd always been the one with the plans. I was just the one who followed. We stood outside afterward, the rain gone but the air still damp, the city lights painting our faces gold. "You changed your name," he said, hands in his pockets. "Yeah, I had to." He nodded slowly. "I saw what happened online. I wanted to reach out, but I didn't think you'd want to hear from me." "You're right," I said quietly. "At first, I didn't. But then, I think I wanted to. I just didn't know what to say." We both looked down, the silence heavy but not suffocating. "I didn't mean for it to get that bad," he said after a while. "The post, I should have defended you. I just froze. Everyone told me to stay quiet. That if I said something, it would only make it worse." I nodded. "Yeah, I get it. Silence feels safer sometimes, even when it kills everything around it." He winced, eyes glistening. "I never stopped believing in you, Julian. Not really." The words hit me harder than I expected. Because that was all I'd ever wanted to hear. I took a breath. "You hurt me. I know. And I hurt you too." He looked up, surprised. "You didn't." "I did," I said firmly. "I made you believe I was stronger than I was. I let you carry us when I should have been your equal. I thought love was enough to build a life on. It wasn't. He smiled faintly. But it was something. Yeah, I whispered. It was. We didn't kiss. We didn't hug. We just stood there, two people who had once been everything to each other, now learning what it meant to be enough on their own. When he finally left that night, he said one last thing. Keep believing in yourself, Jules. That's all I ever wanted for you. And I realized then, maybe that had always been his love language. Not holding me, not keeping me, but letting me go when it was time. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Silas. It was short, just a link again. This time, it was a private video. The title read, "The Boy Who Learned to Stay." I pressed play. It was just footage of light, streaming through windows, flickering across walls, falling on empty notebooks. Then his voice. Some people enter your life to teach you how to fly, others to teach you how to land. And sometimes, it's the same person. I closed my laptop, tears stinging my eyes, and smiled, because I finally understood. He wasn't apologizing. He was thanking me for the story we'd written together, messy, flawed, but real. A year passed. I graduated quietly, no fanfare, no spotlight. I started teaching photography at a youth center downtown, helping kids who'd been told their dreams were too wild or too strange. Sometimes, when I watched them hold a camera for the first time, their faces lighting up as the world came into focus through the lens, I'd think of Silas. He taught me that art isn't about control. It's about surrender, about trusting that the light will fall where it's meant to. Last month, one of my students asked me, "Have you ever been in love?" I smiled. "Yeah, once." "Did it work out?" she asked. I thought about it for a long moment before answering. "It depends what you mean by work out." She tilted her head, confused. I said, "It didn't last, but it changed everything." She grinned. "Sounds like a good story." "It was," I said softly. "It still is." That night, I took my old camera from the closet, the one Silas gave me on my 21st birthday. It still worked, though the screen had a crack. I stepped outside into the evening air, framed the horizon through the lens, and clicked. The light spilled perfectly, golden and tender. And I whispered, "Thank you." Not to him, not to the past, but to the version of myself who had dared to love, to fall, to rebuild. Because sometimes, survival itself is the most beautiful art there is. Weeks later, I received a small brown package in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a photo, one I didn't remember taking. It was of us. Silas and me, laughing on that old rooftop, sunset painting our faces orange and gold. On the back, written in his messy handwriting, "For the boy who taught me what light really means." I held the photo for a long time, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't feel broken. I just felt whole. Because maybe love doesn't always last. But truth does. And ours, messy, flawed, painful, beautiful, was always real. Final lines. I don't know where Silas Reed is now. Maybe somewhere new, chasing stories, capturing strangers who remind him of who we used to be. But sometimes, when the light hits my camera just right, I swear I can still hear him, whispering through the frame, "You just don't trust it yet." And this time I smile, because I finally do. 2 years later. The world had moved on, as it always does. Hashtags faded, gossip threads disappeared into the endless scroll of the internet, and what was once a scandal became nothing more than a story buried beneath newer noise. But for me, for Julian Cross, some stories never stop echoing. Not because they haunt you, but because they remind you that you lived. The youth center where I taught photography had become my second home. The walls were covered in the kids' work. Pictures of cracked sidewalks, city sunsets, stray cats, laughter frozen mid-air. Some of the photos were blurry, imperfect, and yet they carried more life than any polished studio portrait ever could. That was what I wanted to teach them. That art wasn't about perfection. It was about presence, about showing up for the world, even when it didn't show up for you. On a quiet Thursday evening, I stayed late to clean up the darkroom. The smell of developer hung in the air, sharp and nostalgic. That's when I noticed the envelope. It was slipped under the door, no name, no address. Just a thin strip of old film tape holding it shut. My hands trembled a little as I opened it. Inside was a single photo, a black and white shot of the lake where Silas and I used to film at sunset. The water looked calm, endless, and there, in the corner of the frame, was his reflection. He wasn't looking at the camera. He was looking away, toward the horizon, like he always did when he was dreaming of something bigger than both of us. On the back, there was one line, handwritten in blue ink. For every story that ends, another begins in the light that remains. No name, no signature, but I didn't need one. I smiled, and for the first time, the ache in my chest felt like peace instead of loss. Later that night, I sat by the window of my small apartment, rain tapping gently on the glass. The photo lay on my desk beside my notebook. I took out my pen and began to write. Not a letter, not a confession, just a piece of truth. Dear Silas, I used to think the world broke us. Now I think it just taught us how to bend without breaking. We were young. We didn't know what we were building, only that it mattered. You taught me to see light in the cracks. I hope you're still chasing it wherever you are. Because I am too. I didn't mail it. I didn't need to. Some messages don't need to be sent. They just need to be written so they can stop living in your chest. Weeks later, one of my students came running up to me during class, holding her phone. Mr. Carter, look, isn't this your friend? She showed me a new video on YouTube. The title read, The Ones Who Stayed Behind a Short by Silas Reed. I hesitated. My heart skipped, then steadied. The thumbnail showed sunlight streaming through an open window, dust particles glowing like stars. When I pressed play, his voice filled the room. Older now, softer. We don't always get the ending we want, but sometimes we get the story we need. The film was quiet, just people laughing, crying, dancing. Ordinary lives, extraordinary in their simplicity. And then, near the end, the frame shifted. A photograph appeared, my photograph. The one I'd taken that night years ago, of the golden horizon through my cracked camera screen. And underneath, his voice whispered. He once told me light never dies. I think he was right. The screen faded to black. I didn't realize I was crying until one of my students asked softly, Are you okay, Mr. Carter? I wiped my eyes and smiled. Yeah, I am. Because somehow, in that moment, everything came full circle. Months later, I received an invitation in the mail. The Reed Foundation for Creative Youth Opening Gala, dedicated to those who dare to believe in their art. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just a film scholarship. It was a movement. A program Silas had started to help kids who couldn't afford to study art or film, who'd been told their dreams were too unrealistic. My name was printed on the list of founding mentors. He hadn't asked. He hadn't called. He just included me, like I'd never stopped being part of the story. That night, standing in the crowded hall of the new foundation, I found myself surrounded by light. Literally. The walls were lined with glowing photos, portraits of students, scenes of life, color, and motion. And in the center of the room was a massive canvas projection, a looping video montage of faces smiling into Silas's lens. I stood there, watching, until I felt someone step up beside me. I was wondering if you'd come. That voice, soft, familiar, warm. I turned. Silas was there. Still handsome, still full of quiet energy, but calmer now, grounded, the kind of calm that comes when someone finally forgives themselves. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. After a while, he said, they needed someone like you to teach them, someone who knows what it means to keep going. And they needed someone like you to remind them why they should, I replied. We both smiled. Then he nodded toward the big projection screen. We did good, didn't we? Yeah, I said softly. We did. As the night wound down, I stepped outside to the balcony. The city glowed below. Endless lights, endless stories. Silas joined me there, leaning against the railing. You know, he said after a long pause, I think about that night at the lake sometimes. How I told you I believed in you. I glanced at him. You were the first person who ever did. He smiled faintly. And now you believe in yourself. That's what matters. We didn't talk about the past anymore. Not the pain, not the rumors, not the mistakes. We didn't need to rewrite it. We'd already lived it and learned from it. When he left that night, he didn't say goodbye. He just touched my shoulder gently and whispered, keep chasing the light. And for once, it didn't feel like an ending. Felt like a promise. Later that night, I walked home through the quiet streets, camera in hand. I lifted it toward the skyline, where dawn was just beginning to break. Click. A new frame. A new story. A new beginning. And this time, the light wasn't his. It was mine. Some loves don't fade, they transform. They become the quiet courage you carry into every day, every moment, every frame of your life. And if you're lucky, someday you'll look back, not with regret, but with gratitude, for the boy who once believed in you so much that you finally learned to believe in yourself.